Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today, as you can see, I'm doing a face chart tutorial. To get started, I'm taking a large fluffy powder brush and I'm actually buffing a lovely bright peach color right the way over my face chart. And the reason why I'm doing this is the face chart look I'm going to be doing today is of a really beautiful warm deep skin tone, and I learnt this trick from one of my favorite face chart artists called James Molloy, who actually created this template of the face chart that I'm working on today. And he recommends going in with a warm peach blusher first. And what this does is it creates a warm undertone of the base. So when you place any products over the top, so your deeper, darker powders, they don't look too ashy. So the skin can still look really lovely and warm. So I first go in with that fluffy brush and then I'm swapping to a slightly smaller brush. This is a MAC 109 brush, and I'm just completely covering this warm blusher right the way over the skin until we get a nice intensity. And for a little bit of fun, I thought I would show you my first attempt at doing the pre-warm base, and I used a sponge, and as you can see, she looks extremely sunburnt, so I definitely recommend going in with the brush first. So now that I have my warm base down, I'm going in with a wedge sponge and I'm taking a really beautiful dark toned matte brown. The powder that I'm actually using is an Australis contour powder, and I'm starting off my application by applying this with my sponge on the perimeters of the face. So as you can see, I started through the temple and working right the way down, using quite a lot of pressure on my sponge just so I get a really lovely even application, and I just want to work this right the way around the face. So as you can see, I actually like to be able to turn my face chart around so I can work easily from both sides. So just starting from the perimeters of the face, pushing this product into the skin, and we'll start to get that really beautiful warm deep base that we desire. Now I do have to admit it does look a little bit strange at first. It will look a little bit patchy, but you do just have to be patient with it. Just keep going in and building up your layers. And then once I've laid a really good amount of product down with my sponge, I'm going to go back in with my smaller powder brush, which is quite dense, which is the MAC 109 brush, and I'm going to take that same brown shade that I'm using. So again, it is a contour powder from Australis, and I am just going to buff this powder right the way around the skin. So exact same as we did with the powdered peach blusher. Okay, I'm just going to buff this right the way around the skin. This is just going to add another layer of texture to the skin. It's going to add another layer of dimension, and the more that we layer products onto the skin, the more flawless and more three-dimensional your face chart is going to look. So just keep building up with product until you get your desired intensity. And a fantastic tip that I learned from one of my other all-time favorite face chart artists, Liza Kondrevich, is before you actually start your face chart, you can go in with tracing paper, or I actually use baking paper because that's what my mum had in the kitchen. And what I do is I lay the tracing paper over the face chart. I then trace out the outline. I cut that outline out, replace it over the top of my face chart and tape it down. And this just ensures that I get really lovely clean lines. So I always do this before I start a face chart tutorial. So as you can see, I just keep building up the coverage, building up the layers until I have my desired depth. And then once I'm happy with how the base is looking, I'm going to start contouring. So to contour, I'm going to take a really lovely dark brown eyeshadow. I'm going to be applying that, as you can see here, on a flat shader brush. I'm going to mainly be applying with my flat shader brush, sometimes swapping to the pointed side of this brush, which as you can see, it is a dual-ended brush. So I'm starting out with this dark brown eyeshadow, and I'm first starting applying that on the edges of the temple, and as you can see now, I'm teasing it diagonally upwards and outwards. And this is what is called cross hatching, and this is going to start to be the really great foundation for blending in our contour into the rest of our base. So I like to first lay down right on the edges of the face chart, and then I use my brush to go diagonally upwards and diagonally downwards to start cross hatching. And again, the exact same principle principle on the cheek. So I'm just starting to outline the cheek by going up and down with my brush, and then I like to lay in the angle of my contour. So when I contour the cheek, as you can see here, I like to aim my contour from the bottom corner of the bottom of the mouth, and then I angle that diagonally upwards. And as you can see, that gives a really beautiful contour shade. And by angling that from the mouth, it means that you get really great balance for both sides. So as you can see, once I've laid my line down, I am diagonally cross-hatching upwards, okay? Again, this is going to give you a really beautiful blend and the base for you to build on your contour. And now, when choosing the correct shade to contour with when working on deeper skin tones, it's a similar principle when we're doing makeup on actual people, okay? I like to go maybe 2 to 3 shades darker, okay? We can always build depth and intensity, but to make the blend really lovely and seamless, I like to first go in with a shade that's about 2 or 3 shades darker so I can get my blend really nice, and then I can work on the depth. Okay, that's a really good tip. Now, as you can see, I'm working on the jaw. So again, I'm just using my brush to create an outline around my face chart. So once I've created the outline, I'm going to really lightly cross hatch upwards. So now turning the page around, I'm going to do the exact same thing. So taking my flat shader brush, I'm applying that nice dark brown shade that's still quite warm, about 2 to 3 shades darker than the base I've chosen, starting with applying the product at the outline of the face chart, and then to blend, I'm going to cross hatch by blending upwards and outwards diagonally. Then taking that down to the cheek to start to create the cheek contour and getting the angle of the cheek contour by following the bottom of the lip. And then to blend, of course, we want to cross hatch by blending upwards and outwards diagonally. It's quite easy if you guys watch the pattern of my brush. So we can see that I'm cross hatching diagonally upwards and diagonally outwards, which again will give you a really beautiful blend. And now what I'm doing is I'm going back in with my MAC 109 brush, and I'm taking a little bit of the same product that I used to contour, and I'm just buffing this just around the edges, which is going to start giving us a really beautiful blend. But of course, it will start to give us some lovely depth to the face chart. So working in small layers, I try not to pick too much product up, as if I pick up too much product and deposit that onto the face chart, it can look a little bit muddy. So just picking up a little bit of product and going over all the areas where I've contoured to blend it out and to give us some lovely depth. And just keep going until you are happy with the amount of depth that you have. Remember, lots and lots of layers. And you can also always go back in with a clean, fluffy powder brush to get rid of any excess of any loose powders that are on the face chart, just so it's nice and clean. And now, as you can see, I have swapped back to my fluffy eyeshadow brush, and I'm doing the exact same steps that we did when we're first contouring. So again, I'm beginning the application of the powder on the outline of the face chart and then cross hatching diagonally upwards and outwards. However, I have now swapped to a deeper brown shade. So the first brown shade that I used to contour was still lovely and dark. It was quite warm, but I'm now using an even deeper, richer brown shade. This is an Inglot eyeshadow. It doesn't really matter the exact products that you use as long as you are varying the depth of them. So I go in to create really beautiful depth with quite a lot of different shades of brown. That is going to give you really beautiful depth and really lovely dimension as well. As a guide, I would say that this dark brown shade is probably 3 to 5 shades darker than the skin tone, which of course is going to give some really lovely depth. So just keep going right the way around the contours of the face, applying and blending. And you can always go back in with your dense fluffy brush just to soften out anything, just to make sure it blends really beautifully. So now, as I said earlier, I'm going in with the pointed side of this brush so I can be a lot more precise, and I'm actually taking a black eyeshadow. So what I'm doing with the black eyeshadow is I am just laying this on the very outline, so the very edges of the face chart. And then once I've laid this black down, I don't pick up any more product. As you can see here, I'm simply blending back and forth over this line, so it starts to look really lovely and blended and not so harsh. So what you want to do with this black eyeshadow is you just want to keep it to the very outer edges of your contour. So of course I've kept that on the outer edges of the forehead and the temple. I'm taking that on the very bottom of the contour line. I'm also going to take that along the jawline as well. And you will see here that we're going to start to get some gorgeous, gorgeous depth. So because we've gone in with a nice warm dark brown, a cooler, darker brown, and a black, we're going to get that really lovely gradation. So just keep using that pointed brush, simply just to go over the very outline edges, and keep going back and forth once you've laid down the product without picking up any more of that shadow, back and forth over the line until it's really beautiful and seamless. Then I'm actually going to pick up a little bit of the shade that I used before the black, so that really lovely dark brown, and I'm taking the fluffier side of my brush and I'm just lightly teasing this outwards. Okay, so you can see that we're doing a light crosshatch method, so I'm diagonally blending upwards and outwards. Again, we just want to make sure that this is as seamless as possible, so we get that lovely, almost an ombre effect going from the darkest fading out into light. This is personally my favorite part of doing the face chart. I love creating depth and warmth to the skin, so I really do take my time. This isn't something that you want to rush. The more time you take and the more finesse you have, the more lovely and blended and flawless your face chart is going to look. So as you can see, I'm going back in with my MAC 109 brush. I'm taking a mixture of the first brown that I used to contour with the second brown, and I'm just buffing out around the contour edges again, so you start to see that we've got that lovely blended and bronze look, and you can definitely tell that her skin tone is really starting to come to light. So she's got that beautiful richness, beautiful warmth, and lovely depth without looking too cool toned. So that trick with the blusher underneath the skin by James Molloy is such a fantastic tip. So I'm happy with the base. Let's move on to the nose. So I'm taking the pointed side of my brush and I'm taking a nice light brown shade, and what I'm doing, as you can see here, is I'm just starting to shade around the edges of the nostrils. Okay, so I like to go in with a lighter brown first and shade right around the nostrils, as you can see here. I also like to take that down and create some cupid lines, so the underneath of the nose going straight down to meet the cupid's bow of the lip. I then like to shade on top of the nostrils. As you can see here on this face chart template, there already are sketched out and blacked out nostrils, so I like to go over the top. This gives really great 3 dimension to the nose. I then, with my brush, like to cup the underneath of the nose. So as you can see here, I like to shade just underneath the nose, almost doing sort of a half semicircle. And then what I'm going to do to create a really beautiful sort of snatched, as I would say, tip is I'm using my brush and I'm doing a circular motion. And what this is going to do is create a natural contour to the nose, but leaving the center clean, as you can see here. And it looks like a natural tip to the nose. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got 2 lines to my nose. I've got the nose edges and I've got the nose contour. So I'm going to start by using this fluffy side of my brush and I'm going to create two lines vertically upwards from the contour lines. So what this is going to do is we are mapping out the contour of the nose. So I want the model to have a really lovely snatched, very contour nose. Obviously we've very harshly contoured the face, so I want to make sure that that is emulated in the nose. So once I have used my brush to create those lines, I'm swapping to a flat synthetic brush, as you can see here, and what I'm doing is I am blending this color up into the eye socket. Now the reason why I have changed brushes is this is of course going to change the application, and that's because the brush has a larger surface area. So as you can see, I'm blending this up into the eye socket and really pushing that into the paper so it's really lovely and blended. I think that on a face chart, the nose is another thing that you really do want to take your time on. It does take a lot of practice, so lots of blending, lots of small amounts of product on the skin, so lots of layering. I try to go in with less product on the skin so it's a lot easier to blend. So as you can see, I'm just buffing this as much as I can into the corners of the sockets of the eyes just to get that natural hollow of where our nose naturally hollows into our eye sockets, just using the shape and the length of the brush and letting that do a lot of the work for me. And then to blend out the contour edges of the nose into the actual edge of the nose, I am again using this brush and using the length of this brush to do the work for me. Okay, so just buffing and blending this product out. As you can see, I'm literally pulling the product out so we get a really lovely soft natural blend. So we basically want this powder to almost be a little bit ombre. So we want the bulk of it to be at the contour lines of the nose, and then I want to pull that product out so it's a really lovely, nice soft blend. So as you can see here, you can see the difference between a blended side and a non-blended side, okay? So again, using the length of this brush to do most of the work and pulling this line outwards so it's really lovely and seamless, and just keep going until you're happy with the blend. If you feel that your nose contour lines have been a little bit lost, you can go back in with your smaller brush and just reinforce those lines so they're a little bit stronger and a little bit more snatched. And this really is a process, guys. As I said, it's a step that I really do take a lot of time on. So just keep really softly applying and then blending out as much as you can so you have the most realistic looking nose. It does take practice, but the more you practice and the more you blend, they will start to look really lovely and beautiful and a little bit more realistic and three-dimensional. Back in with my MAC 109 brush, I'm just going in again with my medium warm brown matte ingot eyeshadow, just until I'm happy with the depth, which as you can see I am, and now I'm moving on to eyeshadow. So I'm picking up a light to medium matte eyeshadow shade, and as you can see, I'm picking that up on a flat shader brush, and I'm just focusing my placement nice and flush and tight to the socket. So I'm not worried about blending at this stage. I just want to deposit that color right through the socket. And we're doing the exact same method on the other eye. So just keeping this shadow nice and flush to the socket. Again, not worried about blending at this stage. I'm just focusing on my placement through the socket. So now picking up a slightly lighter brown eyeshadow. As you can see here with my brush, I've turned it on the side and I'm just laying this slightly lighter brown shadow a little bit above the socket line where we first placed that eyeshadow, and I'm just blending this back and forth and upwards until I get a really beautiful seamless blend. So we're going to do the same on the other eye, turning the brush sideways, going in with a slightly lighter brown shade and applying that above where we applied the socket shade, and then just blending that upwards and outwards so we get a really lovely seamless blend. And now for the outer corner, I'm taking a nice rich dark brown shade on the other end of my brush, which is a really dense bullet brush, and I'm just applying this to begin with on the outer corner, and then the shape of my eyeshadow that I want to do today is really elevated and lifted. So as you can see, I'm using the shape of my brush to create the shape of the eyeshadow. So I'm using this brush to both apply and blend. So I'm applying the shadow exactly where I wish to deposit the color, and then I'm also using the brush to blend it so we get a really nice seamless blend. So just going back in and depositing the color until I'm happy with the depth, and then we can buff it out until it's really lovely and blended. The key of getting great three-dimension and intensity is layering. So just keep depositing the color down and blending it until you're happy with the intensity and the overall look of it. So just keep applying and keep blending. And of course the same on the other eye, so taking that dark brown on my really dense bullet brush, I'm beginning the eyeshadow placement on the outer corner of the eye and then using my brush to create that really beautiful elongated lifted eyeshadow. And once I've placed that down, just going in and blending it till I get a really beautiful seamless shape and blend. And now moving on to our eyeliner portion, I'm going to start off with a really sharp black pencil. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly sketch in my waterline, and this is going to give us the angle for our wing eyeliner. So as you can see, I am just dragging this really sharp black pencil directly upwards, following the angle of the waterline, and this is a great way to ensure that you have a really fantastic balance. And then I take the pencil on the inner corner of the eye to taper out the eyeliner really finely. And then going in with one of my favorite pens, and this is going to start creating our eyeliner. So as you can see, I'm going directly upwards, following that line that we traced with our pencil, and then back in with the pencil again, just to finely taper out the edge of the eyeliner so it's nice and clean and tapered. And then going back in with my pen, I'm drawing a straight line from the wing to the eye line. Okay, I'm going to do this exact same on the other eye. So with my pen, following the underneath of the waterline, going diagonally upwards in a straight line, tapering the edge of that straight line out really finely with my pencil, and then back in with my pen, drawing a straight line from the edge of my wing to meet the upper lash line. So as you can see here, we sort of have the skeleton of our wings. And now the fun part, we are just going to start building up the eyeliner. So I'm going to first start out by tracing the lash line, so the upper lash line that is already printed on my face chart. So once I've traced it, I'm going to color everything in. I like to swap to a slightly thicker pen to color everything in because it's a little bit quicker and it's really satisfying, as you can see here. So I'm using my slightly thicker pen, and once I have colored in all the lines, I'm going to start to build up the depth and the shape. And this is obviously going to be very dependent upon how you want your liner. Today for this look, I wanted a really beautiful, thick statement, quite a cat eyeliner because we really did elongate the eyeshadow in quite an upwards motion. So I wanted to emulate that with the eyeliner. So I find the best way to get balanced eyeliner is to start off, as we did, by mapping the underneath of the waterline with a pencil and then continuing that with a pen, and then doing that straight line on both eyes, and then it's a lot easier for you to build balance. Okay, so they're going to be a lot easier to create lovely even wings. Okay, and now the fun part, as you can see here, is I'm just creating my eyeliner shape and then coloring it in. And a good tip is, as you can see here, I'm actually leaning my hand on a little bit of clean tracing paper just so I don't let any oils from my hand transfer onto the paper. Okay, so we always have a really lovely clean face chart. So now that we've got our gorgeous wing liner, it's time to smoke it out. So I'm taking this flat, very dense Morphe brush. It's quite a square brush, and I'm going in with a black eyeshadow, and I'm going to start to tease this black eyeshadow on the top line of my wing. So because I'm using such an intense black, I'm using such a small and very defined brush. Okay, so this means that I can be really precise in my placement. Okay, so I've got a lot of control. So once I have applied that intense black eyeshadow with that square Morphe brush, I'm going back in with my dense bullet brush, which again, because it's reasonably smaller, I've got quite a lot of control of where the black is going to go. And I am just using this brush to go back and forth over that line until I get a really beautiful, sexy, sultry blend. And again, the same principle applies here. If you want a really lovely dimensional and intensified look, we just keep going in with layers. So keep applying your shadow and then keep blending it, and then you get a really lovely, intense, and very three-dimensional eye makeup look. If you need to soften it even further, you can see that I'm swapping to the fluffier side of my brush. Okay, and that's just going to soften it and diffuse it even further if it's looking a little bit too harsh. Now that I've got my beautiful sexy smoky liner, taking the fluffy side of my brush, I'm just going in with a really nude matte peach shade from Inglot, as you can see here, and I'm just popping this on the areas with a mobile lid that don't have any product, just so it doesn't look blank. And then I'm going to move on to defining the crease. So I'm taking that same square dense brush from Morphe, and I haven't picked up any more black eyeshadow. I'm just using whatever's left on it, and I'm following the line that is already sketched out in the face chart template. So just using that brush to apply the line, and then I'm going in with my blending brush just to soften that line so we get a perfect balance of definition, but it's still a really nice blend and nothing is too harsh. So just keep going back in and applying and blending until you get your desired look. Now to begin the smoking out of the underneath of the eye, going in with my same black pencil, and I'm just going to lightly sketch in where the waterline would be, so I've got an idea of where I can lay my shadows down. And again, going in with that same square brush, I'm keeping this tight to the waterline, and I'm taking a really dark brown shade because I am going to go really dark and smoky underneath, but I'm going to go in with a brown shade first, similar to a transition shade that we would normally do when doing eye makeup. And this is just going to make, when we apply our black eyeshadow, a lot more seamless. So as you can see, I've laid that down and I'm blending that out with my blender brush before I go in with any black. So you can already see I'm getting a nice seamless blend. And now time for that gorgeous, sexy black smoky eye. So I'm following that waterline using that same square brush and that same really intense black eyeshadow. I'm laying this on the waterline and then I'm going to go back in with my blending brush. I'm going to use, as you can see, the pointed bullet side, and we're going to start to diffuse this. And again, because I want this to look really lovely and intense and really three-dimensional, the key to achieving that look is lots of layers. So as you can see here, I am constantly going back in with that black, applying, and then back in with my blending brush to blend. And I'm going to keep going until I am happy with the blend and the intensity. And then a really amazing trick to have the eyes look very realistic and very three-dimensional is I'm going to go back in with my Morphe square brush with whatever black eyeshadow is left on the brush, and I'm going to lightly shade the top of the eye shape. And then moving on to some gorgeous eyelashes, I'm going to start off taking a very sharp black pencil, and I'm going to start with my isolating lashes. So as you can see, I'm going from underneath of the eye line, and I like to create my isolating lashes. Okay, so basically I do this about 3 or 4 times. Okay, so I take clusters of lashes, so as you can see, about 3, and I'm scattering them over the lash line. Okay, so what this does when we isolate our scattered lashes, this gives us a base to be able to go in and add depth to the lashes. Okay, by doing this first, so by isolating and scattering your lashes, you're going to get really lovely finesse, really lovely movement, and a really lovely, more natural, realistic shape to them. So as you can see, I'm always starting at the base of that eyeliner and I'm flicking upwards on a slight curve. Okay, so obviously, if you want your lashes to be really curly, of course you can do really, really intense C-shaped curls. But as you can see here, I'm going for a more relaxed curve. Okay, so the rule of thumb is when working on the outer half of the eye, you want them to curve outwards, and then on the inner corner of the eye, you want the lash to curve inwards. Okay, and the key to making your lashes, again, look really beautiful and dimensional and natural, even if you are going for a false lash, is patience, just taking your time and only adding them where they need to go. And then moving on to the bottom lashes, as you can see here, I'm doing the exact same principle. So I'm starting off isolating my scattered lashes, so just doing a couple of clusters of lashes around the bottom eyelash line. Again, making sure that we're doing really beautiful, relaxed, curved lines. Okay, remember that natural bottom lashes aren't straight. They do have a lovely, soft, natural curve to them. So we want to make sure that we emulate that when drawing on our lashes. So when I do lashes, I like to do the bulk of them with a really sharp pencil, and then I go back in with the same pen that I used to do the bulk of my wing liner, and I like to go over where I've drawn the lashes, and because this pen is a little bit more intense than my black pencil, because as you can see, the black pencil application is really lovely and soft, this is going to create texture, this is going to create dimension, and it's going to create intensity. Okay, so I love going in with the black pencil first and then topping the top and the bottom lashes with a black pen, which, as I said, it'll give you lovely dimension, intensity, and as you can see here, it looks absolutely beautiful. So they are our top lashes basically done, and then we're going to emulate the exact same step on the bottom. So as you can see on the top, I'm going in a couple of different directions just to create some lovely realism and dimension, which as you can see here on the top, and then of course emulating the same step on the bottom giving our lashes some gorgeous dimension and texture and intensity. A really great tip to getting some really fantastic, realistic looking lashes is actually going on Google and just Googling some images of an eye and really studying the natural pattern and how eyelashes naturally lay. Okay, so we can see there's a big difference there. Again, I'm going in with my tracing paper just to make sure that no residual oils from my hands are going to spoil the paper, which would then in turn spoil the makeup on the face chart. Okay, so again, with lashes, it really does come with practice. I find the more face charts that I do, the more finessed and the more manicured that my eyelashes look. So it's definitely practice, but Googling an image of an eyelash and looking at the pattern and how the lashes behave is a really great tip in getting some lovely, textured, three-dimensional, very realistic lashes. Okay, so now that our eyelashes are looking beautiful, let's move on to the brows. So the first step of the brow is I'm going to go back in with my square Morphe brush, just with any brown shade that I have, and I'm going to start to create the shape of the brow. Now, I find that using whether it's a square brush or an angle brush, the shape of this brush is going to do the majority of the work for us. Okay, so I'm just going to really lightly map out a rough shape of the brow shape that I intend to do. So of course I'm emulating that on the other eye. So as you can see here, I'm going to start with the underneath of the brow, again using any brown eyeshadow that I have, and then creating a top line, creating the arch and the corners of my brow. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of a medium brown shade and I'm just going to messily fill this in. You really don't have to be too neat with this at all, because the bulk of our brows are going to be our faux brow hairs. And to create those faux brow hairs, I'm going to take a very, very sharp brown pencil. And similar to how we did our eyelashes, I just want to emulate to the best of my ability a natural brow hair. So again, a really fantastic tip is going on Google and Googling an image of an eyebrow to see the pattern of the hairs and how they naturally sit. But I am just going to start by doing soft curves. Okay, so we emulate a really beautiful, natural, feathery brow. And then I'm going to turn my face chart around and work on my left brow. So again, I'm going to emulate the same steps, starting from the beginning of the brow using my very sharp brown pencil. I'm going to create some soft faux feather-like brow hairs right the way across the brow. And then once we have completed this step with our brown pencil, we're going to go in with an extremely sharp black pencil. Okay, and we're going to do the exact same thing. This is just going to create intensity, it's going to create depth, and of course it's going to create three-dimension. So just using my pencil just to keep building up my brow hairs, and remember always having some form of barrier between your hand and the face chart so nothing spoils. And then back in with my black pencil, and this is where we're going to really start to see some shape, some definition, some depth and intensity, and a lot of texture. Okay, I personally like to have very textured, realistic looking brows. Regardless of what shape I like to do, I always like them to be very feathery and very textured. I think it just adds another element of three-dimension to the face chart. And my biggest tip to getting the most realistic 3D brows, if you are using a colored pencil, is just to make sure that the pencil is as sharp as it possibly can be. Okay, that is going to give you the finest possible lines. Henceforth, your brows are going to look extremely realistic and textured. So this is how the brows are looking now when we've created the lovely faux brow hairs, but I'm going to now go back in with that square brush and I'm taking a really dark brown, and this step is almost like coloring in your brows or filling in your brows as if you would on yourself or on a client. So I'm just taking that darker brown shade, I'm creating really clean lines using the shape of my brush, okay, on the upper part and the lower part of the brow, and then I'm also going to use that brush to color in the brow. And then a final step I like to do is taking a really sharp brown pencil and outlining the brow. And this is going to create a really sharp, really defined, really clean and crisp brow. So we've got some lovely feathery brows. Now moving on to the iris. As you can see, I've already done the left-hand side, so we're going to work on this side now. So the first thing that I'm going to do, taking my sharp black pencil, is I'm going to outline the shape of the iris. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So as you can see, I'm taking my pencil just to go slightly around the edge of the already drawn in iris. Okay, and then I'm taking a dark brown pencil just to do some messy strokes around the iris. I always go in with a yellow pencil, and then I'm taking a medium brown and I'm sort of shading around here. I find that when I'm coloring in irises, I find that the less I think about it, the more realistic it looks. I find that if I spend too much time and I get too hung up about what it looks like, it almost looks like I've tried too hard. So I try to be sort of as messy as I possibly can. And then I'm going back around the iris with my black pen and blending that out with my black pencil. So I get a really lovely defined iris. And then I'm going to go back in with that black pen and I'm going to define my pupil even more. So I'm just creating a small circle with my black pen just in the pupil, as you can see here. And then to create some lovely highlights, I'm taking white out. So I'm doing 2 dots just above the pupil and then a really fine line in the middle of the eye. And then taking a light pink flesh tone pencil, I'm going to colour in the very inner corner of the eye. And then I'm also going to use this pencil just to lightly shade right the way over the eye, again just to give a little bit of dimension. And now that the eyes are done, we're going to move on to the skin. So I'm going to go in now with some blusher. I'm taking this gorgeous, really deep plum shade, and I'm taking this on a flat, small synthetic foundation brush, and I'm really pushing this blusher into the skin. I personally like quite an intense blusher on a face chart. I just love the way it looks. And I chose a really deep plum shade as this blusher, if it was on someone of a really beautiful, warm, deep skin tone, would look really beautiful. So I wanted to make sure that that was emulated in my face chart. So I'm just going to keep building up this blusher until I'm happy with the depth. And this is a part in my face chart where I had a bit of a breakdown, which as you can see here, I have what I think is possibly a little bit of an oil transfer, possibly with my finger. I was really upset about it. As you can see, I won't stop pointing it out. I do eventually sort of fix it, but these things happen. Try not to get too hung up about it. As you can see here, I tried to fix it. It didn't work at all. but that's okay. And now onto one of my biggest face chart secrets, and that is taking a bright orange eyeshadow, and I'm laying that between where the brown shadows that I've used to contour the forehead meet the foundation powder that I used to color the skin, and this creates a natural sort of bronzer. It puts a little bit of color into the face, a little bit of depth. It's one of my biggest secrets when doing face charts is an orange eyeshadow in place of a bronzer. I absolutely love it. So now, as you can see, moving on to lips, going in with that same square Morphe brush, I'm starting out by lining the lips or creating the lip shape with a nice medium warm matte brown eyeshadow. I'm making the lips ever so slightly bigger, so I'm not fully following the already a drawn template on the face chart. I want to make the lips a little bit bigger, so I'm just creating my own lip shape first with that warm matte medium brown eyeshadow and my square Morphe brush. And then, because I want her to have an open mouth, I am going to create a new lip shape. So I'm taking the same brush and I am going to open her mouth basically. So I am just creating a line above the already drawn in bottom line of the lip. Okay, so I've drawn in my faux top lip and now I'm following the already drawn on bottom lip. Okay, so once that's drawn on, I'm going to start shading in the lip to give a little bit of color with the exact same shade that I've used to line the lips with or to create the lip shape with. So I'm just shading that in until I'm happy with the color. And then I'm taking a really light peach tone nude eyeshadow and I'm going to pop that just in the center of the lips. It's going to give us a really beautiful ombre look, but it's also going to take out any of the white paper showing through. So again, I'm just filling in with that lovely soft peach shade just in the center of the lips. And then I'm going in with a very sharp dark brown pencil and I'm going to outline the edges of the lips so they're really clean, really crisp, making sure I utilize my tracing paper as my barrier. And I'm just going to draw this right the way around the lip until I get a really lovely, clean, crisp line. And also taking that same pencil on the inside of the mouth to get some really beautiful definition. And I'm also using this same pencil to create teeth. So I'm just really lightly sketching in teeth. I'm only putting in about 2. As you can see, her mouth is only ever so slightly open. So just really lightly, just to the best of my abilities. I'm no artist, but just really lightly drawing some soft curved teeth in so they look a little bit natural. And then back in with my square brush, I'm taking a really nice, rich, quite a dark brown shade, and I'm going to take this right the way around the lip line, and this is going to give us that really beautiful depth and dimension. And then once I'm happy with the intensity, I'm just going back in with my fluffy brush to blend. And then I'm using the other side of my fluffy brush, as you can see, just underneath the mouth. And this is just going to create a really soft contour. So I'm going in with a really light brown and just lightly shading, and it's going to make the lips look a little bit more three-dimensional. And now for the finishing touches of the lips, going back in with my dark brown pencil, again very sharp, I'm drawing some very fine vertical lines, and this is just going to emulate some natural lip skin texture. Again, we want to make the lips look as realistic as they possibly can, so this is going to create some great texture. And then for some gorgeous highlights on the lips, going in with my whiteout, and I like to start by doing the highlights on the top of the lip, and as you can see, I keep them flush just to the very top. And then on the bottom lip, as you can see, I'm doing short, very fine vertical strokes again. I just want to best emulate what a natural, very shiny lip gloss would look like, and I find that keeping the highlights on the very top of the lip line and doing short vertical strokes in the middle makes them look very lovely and highlighted. Okay, and now speaking of highlighted, let's do some final touches to the skin. So instead of using a whiteout to highlight the skin, I opted to use a rubber because I have gone for a lovely warm and deep skin tone. I felt that using a whiteout would be far too harsh for a highlight on the skin. So an eraser is a fantastic option. So as you can see, I've hit this highlight on the top of the cheekbones, through the brow bone, a little bit on the inner corner, a little bit down the nose and on the tip of the nose, and a little bit on the chin as well. And this is a fantastic way to do a more refined and a more natural highlight. And now my most favorite and clearly most satisfying and visually pleasing part of the face chart is I'm going to pull away my tracing paper stencil, which as you can see reveals a perfect, lovely, clean face chart. So I am still going in with a clean fluffy powder brush just to get off any sort of excess, if anything's fallen through, which as you can see here, I'm still going in with my eraser just around the very edges as a tiny little bit of product has bled through. But as you can see, by creating that stencil with the baking paper, or tracing paper, I actually just use baking paper because it's what my mum has in the kitchen. It creates a really beautiful, clean canvas. I absolutely love it. And that is basically the end of my tutorial. As always, the last thing that I do when I finish off my face charts is I always sign them. So as you can see here, I am signing them. And that brings me to the end of this tutorial, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really enjoy doing face charts. It's definitely a hobby that I have rediscovered throughout, everything that's going on in the world right now. It brings me a lot of peace. It's very soothing. So I really hope that this relaxed you. I hope that you learned something. Please let me know if there's any more face charts that you'd like to see in the future. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.